Adam, how we doing with turnout? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Joe.
Joe?
We're missing Joe.
Well, as long as we have Juliana, I think we're good. What's up, Juliana? Welcome aboard.
Hi,
So,
thank you all.
yeah, welcome. So everybody, this is our student representative, and she'll be joining us for her first meeting this evening. You're a junior at Malden High, correct? Okay.
Welcome aboard, Juliana.
Welcome.
Yes. Adam, have you heard from Joe?
I have not. Oh,
Okay.
Here's
Here he
Joe.
comes. All right, Adam, you ready to rock?
Whenever you're ready, I will hit record.
I want you to do a 3, 2, 1.
All right, and 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Malden School Committee meeting. Today is Monday, December 7, 2020. The time is 6:00 p.m. Our next meeting will take place on Monday, January 11th, 2021. Can't come soon enough. So in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 revised order prohibiting assemblage of more than 25 people, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited, but all effort will be made to permit public attendance of this meeting via remote access by internet, telephone, and if available, via public broadcast of the meeting by Malden Access Cable Television on public access television channels. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and/or a transcript, record, or recording of the meeting on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. This evening's agenda consists of the following. As always, we'll pledge allegiance to our flag. We'll then have a moment of silence for all those who have served our country. We will then call the roll to ensure that we have a sufficient quorum to conduct business this evening. And then the agenda will be approval of minutes, public comment, superintendent's report, subcommittee reports and discussions, motions and resolutions, personal privilege. We'll then entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining, and then we will return for adjournment. So I would say the biggest highlight on our agenda is our new student representative has joined us, Juliana Davidson, who is a junior at Malden High School. So on behalf of the entire Malden School Committee and the community, welcome aboard, and we're glad to have you. So with that being said, if there are no questions, I'd ask everyone to please rise and salute our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
it stands, one nation,
under God,
God, indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice for all.
justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do so around the world today. Thank you. Our clerk will now call the roll.
Mayor Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Drummy, Mr. Froio,
Yeah.
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Iovino,
Here.
Miss Luong,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Miss Spadafora,
Here.
Mr. Weldai,
Here.
Superintendent Otari,
Here.
Student Representative,
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum that allows us to meet this evening. Let's get into this evening's agenda. So item number 1, approval of minutes. We have 6 sets of minutes. Let's start with November 9th. Regular session minutes of November 9th. And if there be no objection, we'll also take up executive session minutes of November 9th, 2020. Chair hears objection. Chair has none. Mr. Iovino.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any questions, queries, qualms? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now we're going to take a look at the special session minutes of November 23rd, 2020, as well as the executive session minutes of November 23rd, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCarthy to approve, seconded by Ms. Luong. So any questions on those? Chair hears none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. And then finally, the special session minutes of November 30th, 2020, as well as the executive session minutes of November 30th. Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Ms. Luong. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Item number 2, public comment. This is an opportunity for the Malden community to address the school committee. We only ask that you state your name and address for the record and keep your remarks to just a couple of minutes. So with that being said, we'll open public comment, which will be administered by Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if anybody would like to participate, please just either click the raise hand function on Zoom or dial *9 if you're on the telephone. We've got 2 people in the queue so far. So I'm going to start with our first, Deb Giswaldo.
Good evening, Mayor Christensen and Malden School Committee members. My name is Deb Giswaldo. I live at 34 Abington Road in Danvers, and I'm an educator of 17 years in the Malden Public Schools and president of the Malden Education Association. I'll keep my comments this evening brief and to the point. COVID-19 is one of the worst public health crises of our lifetime and has touched the lives of almost everybody in Malden and across the Commonwealth. The public health data regarding COVID-19 took a turn for the worse in October and has rapidly grown even more grim. 352, or 66.8%. That's the number of public school districts, approved special education schools, collaboratives, and charter school districts in Massachusetts that have reported cases of COVID-19 this school year. 5.19%. That's the percent positive rate for Malden as of the December 3rd Massachusetts Department of Public Health weekly COVID-19 report. 134%. That's the increase in Malden's percent positive rate from October 14th to December 3rd. 1.19. That's the rate of exponential spread in Massachusetts, the 3rd highest in the country, tied with Virginia and just behind New York and California. 17.4%. This is the actual 7-day percent positive rate for Massachusetts as of December 4th, and it excludes repeat testers. I would like to note that this data is sourced from information from the Mass DPH and the Boston Globe. 29,230. This is the number of new cases reported by the Mass Department of Public Health in Massachusetts for the first 6 days of December. 28,245. This is the number of active cases of COVID in Massachusetts for people ages 0 to 59. 82% of 1,100. That's the number of hospital beds that are filled in the Northeast region of Massachusetts. 100% of 100. That's the number of ICU beds that are filled in the Northeast region of Massachusetts. 251. The number of people dead in Massachusetts since December 1st due to COVID. 1 in 637, or 10,763. The number of people in Massachusetts dead due to COVID-19 since data regarding the pandemic has been tracked. Third place. Massachusetts is in third place behind New York and New Jersey for the most COVID deaths per 100,000 people in the United States. With an average of 4,871 new cases of COVID per day, Massachusetts is on track to hit 150,000 cases of COVID-19 in December alone. In the absence of sound leadership coming from the top right now in Massachusetts and out of Washington, D.C., it's time for our municipal leaders across the Commonwealth to take a good hard look at the numbers and do what is right and what is necessary to protect the health and safety of children and families in our communities, particularly communities like Malden, in which there are many multi-generational homes. Numbers don't lie. Follow the lead of districts like Framingham and Cambridge. Children can't learn from the ICU or from the grave. Educators cannot educate from the ICU or from the grave. Thank you.
All right, anybody else wishing to address the school committee can do so now.
Okay. Our next speaker is Cheryl Dortona. Are you there?
Yes.
Great. Just please say name and address for the record.
Cheryl Dortona, 57 Aurelia, Sylvia Drive, Revere.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Malden community members, educators, members of the school committee, and Mayor Christensen. My name is Cheryl Dortona. I am an ESP in the Malden Public Schools. Until recently, I have worked for the Early Learning Center since the day the doors opened, but was one of the 26 educators involuntary transferred just 2 days prior to the start of the new school year. I'm here tonight as an educator, a member of the Malden community, and as someone who cares deeply about the students and staff of the Malden Public School to share with you, our elected school committee members, impact statements from my fellow family from the ELC detailing the ways in which the decisions made by the administration and the committee impacted all of us personally and professionally. We are well aware that many months have passed since these changes were made, but for those in the ELC family, it feels like only yesterday. I ask you tonight to commit to listening to the educators shared in their own words how their decision impacted them to work to provide much needed professional development for those of us in new roles and to ensure the reinstatement of the ELC positions at the start of the new academic year. To the parents of the ELC students, please know that we are the educators here in Malden. We will continue to fight to ensure that your children have all the resources they need to grow and to learn in the years to come. Thank you. Stay safe and well. Have a great night.
You as well. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Weldai.
Our next up is a phone number. So let's see. Let's see. Last four numbers 9589. Let's see if it worked.
Last four numbers 9589.
Oh,
Hello.
That's not good.
Yes.
No. I please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Biff Maffio from 81 Waite Street in Malden.
Okay. Can you? We're having a tough time hearing you, Matthew.
Yeah,
Should he put it on mute or?
yeah, I was getting rid of it. Sorry, I should have known better. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was wondering why the school committee has decided to send the teachers back into the building when the governor has said, and everyone else, that all large groups aren't supposed to be meeting. And if the teachers are going to be in there, why aren't the children coming back in if it's safe? I think they should really take another look at this and be concerned about the safety of their teachers. Well, and I feel that we're breaking the rules by sending them back. We're breaking the large group meeting rules.
Okay.
That's really all I wanted to say. Have a good night.
All right, you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next participant is 618. Oh, that was Cheryl. Roger B. Let's see. Roger, you there?
Roger? Okay, let's put him in the queue, Adam. Anybody else?
That is the last of them.
Okay, Roger, going once?
He's muted, if that helps.
Right.
It might have been somebody raising their hand by accident who's not actively there too.
Okay.
All right, so I will put them back in the panelist link, and if I see the hand go up again, I'll let you know.
Yeah, and just see if Adam, maybe Roger can reach us offline. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, very good. So that ends public comment. Now, if there be no objection, let's hop down beyond the superintendent's report to see if we can address winter athletics. I know Ms. Spadafora has that on the docket, and we do have our director here, Mr. Conifrey. So is there any objection to that? Chair has none. So Ms. Spadafora, do you want to introduce or do you want to go right to Mr. Conifrey?
Thank you. I definitely don't have much to say. I just want to state before we allow Mr. Conifrey to speak that back in August, we did have Mr. Conifrey attend one of our meetings to discuss, Malden High School athletics. And at that meeting, we did make a motion that was so voted for Malden Public School to participate in competitive sports under the guidance of our athletic department. So Mr. Conifrey is bringing to us an update from the MIAA on the recently revised winter schedule. And with that, I will allow him to speak to the dates and everything that goes with it.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Let's go to Mr. Conifrey.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Superintendent O'Terry, the esteemed members of the school committee. I appreciate you taking the time tonight. And Ms. Spadafora, I appreciate you mentioning when you allowed me to speak in front of the committee back in August. So there has been some updates. I'll be very straightforward and try not to take too much of your time. I know you have a busy docket. What I am here tonight asking, very similar to what was in August, is the school committee approval to host and participate in interscholastic athletics for the winter season 2020-2021. Based on recent guidelines from the Department of Ed, the EEA, the MIAA, as well as within our league, the Greater Boston League, and obviously within our Malden High School Athletic Department, we have put together the following. Okay, bear with me. We are looking to host the following sports: boys and girls basketball, co-ed swimming, co-ed gymnastics, and boys and girls ice hockey, in which we co-op with Revere with boys, Medford with the girls. Note that in traditional years, non-COVID years, we normally have indoor track and wrestling. Those sports have been moved by the MIA to the fall 2 season, which starts in February, late February. Wrestling has been moved to the spring, which starts in late April. We have set roster sizes set by the state. Boys and girls basketball will be maxed out at 15 per roster. Gymnastics will be 18. Swimming, 18 per roster. And max roster sizes for both boys and girls ice hockey are set at 20. We have mask requirements as specified by the MIA sports-specific rule modifications set forth by the Sports Medicine Committee, and in accordance with our own league and school protocols, Masks will be worn during gameplay and practices by all student athletes and coaches. One caveat to that, gator masks, if you're aware of what gator masks are, those will not be permitted. We have specific mask requirements set forth in our COVID protocol manual, which we designed for the Greater Boston League in all member schools. For anyone that's listening and for anyone that has hopefully read our numerous emails, sport physicals are a must. An in-person physical within the last 13 months must be on file with our nurse's office as well as our athletic office. Despite the pandemic, the Mass Department of Public Health will not accept telehealth physicals for interscholastic sports, so they must be in person. Within our league, the Greater Boston League, we're making every effort to play as many as 10 interscholastic athletic competitions this winter, with plans for interscholastic play to start in January. A plan to have league championships during the February break, if possible. All interscholastic play will commence on Saturdays, with the possibility of playing 2 games in a week, one which will be on a weekday, the other on a Saturday. Malden will compete against one GBL opponent in all sports the same week when possible, in an effort to limit contact and exposure, as well as assist in any contact tracing should it be needed at any point during the season. All Malden High School athletic teams will be performing pre-screening, which will include a temperature check prior to every practice and game. We will look to utilize holidays, i.e. Martin Luther King Day, as well as gameplay during February break, i.e. the league championship, as I mentioned, if possible. Transportation to and from interscholastic athletic competition will be provided by the Malden Public Schools via North Suburban Transportation. All transportation guidelines will be strictly followed and enforced. Spectators will not be allowed at any practice, game, or meets this winter athletic season, with the exception of if we do host a senior night or senior game, we will allow senior athletes, 2 guests from their own household, at least 21 years of age or older. We will also go through our pre-screening process prior to entering. To try to mitigate not having spectators, we're going to be live streaming events. Boys and girls basketball will be live streamed in the Finn Gym via the NFHS network, which is the National Federation of High School Sports. Live stream our swimming event from our pool via YouTube. The MIA bona fide team rule will be strictly enforced, basically stating you may only play for our team and not others, i.e. AAU or club team, for obvious reasons, and health and safety being our #1 priority. We'll have varsity practice 3 days a week, opposed to 5 or 6. Junior varsity level sports will practice 2 days a week throughout the season, compared to 5 days a week. Now, with that being said, the MIA has set a start date of December 14th for schools and districts and leagues that are ready and feel they can start, which is a week from today. With that being said, and speaking with Mr. Oteri, Superintendent Oteri, Mr. Mastrangelo, our principal, and consulting with our head athletic trainer, Jen Sturdivant, as we're looking to start post-break Monday, January 11th, as a start date for tryouts and practices. It's important to note that some school districts, such as the Boston Public Schools and some others scattered across the state, have chosen to forego the set forth start date of December 14th in efforts to mitigate any sort of spread that may take place during the break. We thought that talking it out, as much as we want to start on Monday, a week from today, and get kids back in the building. We think out of an abundance of caution, January 11th is a fair start date. And we'll be able to get practices and games in. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Conifrey, so you're looking for an endorsement from the school committee on this plan?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so before we go to members, let me drop down one and ask our new student representative, Ms. Davidson, what she thinks of this plan, as well as what she may have heard from her classmates. And don't worry, Ms. Davidson, I did this to Mr. Weldai when he was a student representative, so.
Yes, you did.
What do you think, Ms. Davidson, of it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously it's a tense topic and there's so many different perspectives of it that I'm not really sure which one to choose. But some of my own input would be, I really, really want to emphasize to our students, the coaches, and everyone that we need to be following the guidelines and we need to hold them accountable for their actions. Because from a student's point of view, I have seen groups of like 5 or 6, groups of 10, and some of them have been athletes. And I think as long as we take that initiative to kind of explain to the students the importance of the guidelines and kind of say, whatever you feel about COVID, if you want to play this sport, you need to follow this and you need to behave and do these kind of things to get to that point, then I think it's possible, but it's something that we have to have an abundance with caution, as Mr. Conifrey said. Thank you.
I don't know if we need to hear from anybody else.
I don't know, that was pretty good.
All right, Superintendent, I presume you endorse this plan before I open it up to our members.
I do. Principal Mastrangelo, myself, Mr. Conifrey are all in accord with this. I also think it's important to note that several of our league members are pushing off until after the new year as well. So I think it makes the most sense. I think it also would coincide, with reentry. But I think it's about safety. I think all of these, even with the fall athletics, I think safety has to be paramount with it. I think that the guidelines, and I think Ms. Davidson's comments, I wish we could record them, because coming from a peer, it will mean a lot more than, older folks like myself lecturing the student athletes, but it is going to be something that we will have to be very strident on. There's a lot of things in this that obviously are a change, such as no spectators. And I think we all, especially in the winter, love to go to basketball games. We love to cheer on our swimmers in the pool. But I think that the state has taken a very cautious approach to this on one of the MIA committees as well. And we have put forth, it's about safety first. We all value the social, emotional dividend that interscholastic sports pays. We know that our kids need that camaraderie, but it's not going to work if we're not following the guidelines. So I think that, we've also worked, we've worked with the Board of Health in oversight with this as well. I think we have a very solid, safe plan, and we're really excited about having our student athletes finally compete in January, and we're looking forward to it.
All right, very good. Well, why don't we first see if there's enough interest to have a discussion about this. So is there a motion first to get this up on the table? So a motion by Ms. Spadafora, second, and let's see, Mr. Iovino. All right, so now it's properly before us. Let's take some questions of Mr. Conifrey. Let's go Ms. Luong, and then back to Ms. Spadafora, and then Mr. Weldai. Ms. Luong.
Hi, thank you so much. Mr. Conifrey, thanks for coming and giving us the update. I just had two quick questions. One, what's the procedure should an athlete come back positive during this season? So how does that affect, does the whole season gone? Is it just, do we how does that all work?
So that's a great question. And I'll start by saying we learned by standing on the sidelines and watching some sports being played in other school districts during the fall. The those planned shutdowns, it goes back to contact tracing. And that's why the pre-screening that will be done before every practice, every game, and keeping track of that via our online platform, Final Forms, is paramount. So we can trace back and understanding the definition of close contact, so we can properly contact trace and mitigate any response. So to answer your specific question, it doesn't mean the end of the season, doesn't mean the end, but there's definitely shutdowns. There's planned shutdowns. For example, let's say I'll use a fall sport that didn't play, so nobody gets offended. Let's say boys soccer during the fall. A student athlete, comes down with COVID. We do our contact tracing. We shut down for the necessary required period of time. Student athletes are required to get tested and so forth, come back with negative tests. So very similar to what we would do with our, very honestly the same that we do with students and staff in our buildings now.
Okay, Ms.
Great.
Luong?
And then, yep, I just had one more question. So at the start of the season, January 11th, I think that's more than, I think that's makes a lot of sense. So are the athletes tested once for COVID, or are they continually tested throughout the season?
So that's a great question. We don't have access yet to rapid or any sort of testing, and the state has not required athletes to get tested prior to. Mr. Oteri, would you have a better explanation maybe on that? There's no state guidance on that as far as the MIA goes.
Right, there hasn't been. I don't know of districts that have required it or have actually been able to do it exclusively for their athletes. In my report, I'll talk about an opportunity that we're exploring around testing, but we will have the Binex now testing available shortly, but that's for symptomatic testing. So we don't have testing as a baseline. What we would use would be the vitals, the checklist, fevers. Have you had any of these following symptoms in the last 24 hours, much like many districts are doing before students come in, or what our own staff does before they come in.
Okay.
Okay. So one more. So this is a question to my colleagues. Do we think, is that something that we could require? Should we, could we or should we require that prior to the start of a game or start of the season? I mean, what's everybody's thoughts on that? That's all.
All right, let's pop around. Let's go to Ms. Spadafora, then Mr. Weldai, then Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two very quick questions, and I pretty much think I have the answer to one of them, but I just want to make sure. So based on the information that was provided, the districts that are, they've been asked to bring this to their school committees this particular week. Do we know of any districts that have approved this? Just curious, specifically surrounding urban districts, to see, kind of their lead and what they're doing.
Yeah, so within our league, Somerville is going tonight in front of their school committee. Everett is doing the same. Medford has already gotten approval. They're going to start on the 14th. They're a little bit ahead of us in terms of having kids in the building more in a hybrid form, and they feel they can go on the 14th. Somerville is looking for the 11th. Everett, I believe, is looking for after the new year. So going along in line with most of our league, and it won't interrupt any sort of gameplay after the new year would be best.
Thank you. One last question. Just when we were talking about roster sizes, those roster sizes are for JV as well as varsity. So when we say 18 for co-ed gymnastics, is it 18 varsity and junior varsity? I'm just not quite sure on the breakdown.
No, that's a great clarifying question. Absolutely. So for I'll go in more depth. So for boys and girls basketball, we'll be hosting 2 levels of play, JV and varsity. So for those, it will be 30 max. So 15 per JV, 15 per varsity. They do not intertwine. So in years past, JV players sometimes would play or dress for the varsity, right? And it's an exciting time. And at the board level, we voted non-COVID times that, a JV player could play up to 6 quarters, meaning a basketball player could play the whole JV game and still participate in 2 quarters. We're not doing that. We're not allowing any sort of crossing. So 15 for boys and girls varsity, 15 for boys and girls JV basketball. With gymnastics, we only have varsity level, so that would be an 18 max. Swimming, we only have, so I should say 18 max boys and girls, since they're both co-ed, swimming and gymnastics. So you're looking at 36 for each respective sport. So a little bit over 100 total athletes, which is definitely lower than we're used to, but this is definitely a condensed version. Not having indoor track, which is easily 100 student athletes, one of our bigger programs, being pushed out of the winter season has definitely cut down on our participation numbers.
Thank you for that. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Up top, Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Conifrey. Just a comment and a question, I think. And my comment is I want to strongly second what Juliana had said earlier. And I think that on top of, because hearing it from your peers does oftentimes make a lot more sense than hearing it from us. But I would also emphasize that we should be as forceful as possible with making sure that the adults are following and pushing and making sure that, all the guidelines and the precautions are being met. Because I think that's, the coaching staff in particular, right, are the adults they look up to the most. So we want to make sure that they are really being as stringent as possible. While also I think, and you've got a good enough relationship with our partner districts that's the only piece in the back of my mind that keeps me going, is that there's a level of trust there, right? That if something happens or if something gets reported, that it'll be communicated to us in enough of a timely fashion that, we can avoid going to X or playing against, XYZ, whatever it is. But yeah, I really wanted to just second what Juliana said better than I could. And my question, I think, is in response to Ms. Luong's question, and to, I guess, ask the superintendent through Charlie, can the Binex Now testing, could it be utilized in that capacity, like to work with our student athletes, or is it something that we're being given exclusively for like in-school classroom use?
I have to check with Patty Tremendozzi on it. I believe it's really for symptomatic. It's not for like surveillance or, curiosity or baseline testing. I think it's really to give a level of assurance that sniffle that, is going on is not the early onset of coronavirus. We could check on that. I know that Patty took part in a webinar recently, and they're setting up training for our school nurses on it in the next week. So I could look into that, but I don't think that was the intent, but I'm not really sure.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Weldai. Down to Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Conifrey. I just have a 2-part question. So my first part of the question is around people we're allowing people to obviously go into sporting events, and related to the MIAA guidance, I just want to know what your thoughts are about particularly allowing people to actually go into sporting events, because I know that you mentioned allowing possibly spectators to go in during a senior night or something like that. So I just want to know what your thought is to possibly allow people to go into sporting events during the regular season, but we have to have parameters as to where if they have to wear masks and kind of minimize it to maybe 1 spectator or possibly 2 during the regular season. I just want to know what your thought is.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I will preface this by saying the MIA did not come out and say no spectators. They're leaving it up, as they did with most of this, to school districts and leagues to figure that out and what is the best. And to go back to Mr. Weldai's comment about communication, especially within interscholastic athletics, communication with our partner and member schools is vitally important, more so now than ever. If 15 team roster with 3 coaches is going across the street to Everett, we need to know, have those student athletes in trust, right? Have those student athletes been pre-screened? And yes, and the sharing of information is vitally important. Some school districts across the state are going to allow spectators, and those guidelines are set forth by, there's some guidelines set forth by the state, but mainly by the school districts. I really didn't want to bore you with my 50-page COVID protocols manual, but I'd be glad to share it with you, which goes over the nuts and bolts of everything. Our sports medicine committee member from Somerville, Michelle Kelly, is their head athletic trainer, along with our head athletic trainer, had put together this manual, and it covers literally everything. So if you'd like, I can share that COVID protocol league manual. We don't call it a Malden manual or an Everett manual. We did this collaboratively across the league, so we're all following the same protocols. So to answer your question, Mr. McCarthy, they would follow the same protocols of entering a building if we choose to do so. That was a caveat, right? You're thinking about seniors and how much they've lost. Trying to provide some sort of moment for them in a senior night usually is that moment. That they would be contacted 48 hours prior. They would be asked to take the COVID questionnaire. They'd also be pre-screened prior to coming into the event. Masks is obviously mandated at all times. So those are some of the things that we would do to mitigate any response. 6-foot distancing inside. There'd be spots to sit in the stands. Off the top of my head, those are the main protocols that we would keep in place if we choose to have such a thing as senior night.
Okay, Rob?
Thank you very much for that. The second question that I have is actually more towards what Ms. Luong said about testing. I'm not sure if this goes to you, Charlie, or to the superintendent, but in my opinion, I think that we should be testing student athletes before their seasons begin. I think that's I think it's a must, and I think we should do that. Or even a questionnaire from the last time Charlie was here. He said that they would be administering like a question and answer type of thing about, do you have a temperature, or how are you feeling today? But I think that we should at least be testing our student athletes before the seasons begin, because I just want to make sure that all of us want to make sure that everyone's covered when it comes to COVID, and making sure everyone's safe and healthy.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I would agree. I would agree. And if we had the capability to do so, I would love for that to happen. I will state that, to my knowledge, no school district across the state who's participated in this fall athletics and plans to participate in winter athletics has the capability or plan to test any of their student athletes. They plan to follow the sport medicine guidelines set forth by the state, and pre-screening is the paramount procedure before every game practice, before they can enter the building and either practice or participate in a game and or travel to a game. I definitely agree. I would love to have the ability to have rapid testing, but I'm not aware of anything that exists for high school athletes at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCarthy. I'm going to go right to Ms. Davidson, and then up to you, Mr. Iovino, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have two questions. One's an opinion, but I really believe that we should do the baseline training if possible, because not only does that have like a clean slate where we can kind of monitor what happens and see, like, okay, so if everyone tested negative, why are people testing positive now? How does that relate to our current statistics and the numbers that we have in our community? Could we be kind of one of the reasons why our numbers are going up? Additionally, with the holiday season kind of like really there and the start of 2021, I know some students could be thinking 2021, new start, kind of slacking off on those guidelines and following them. So I think the baseline testing would assure us that we're kind of with a solid group of students and that we can trust them and that we know that they are capable and willing to take the test. Because I'm not sure, this leads to my question, are we allowed to mandate testing? Like if a student becomes symptomatic, can we say you have to get a COVID test, or how would that kind of work? Is there a contract? I'm not really sure on that. Thank you.
Mr. Conifrey?
What was the question?
Question was whether or not we can, even if we had all the materials in the world, can we mandate?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to the health and safety of, people, that individual person and everyone that surrounds them, whether it's in their household or coming into a public building. So
Okay.
the answer is
know that we can, and knowing that we don't have the resources yet. In lieu of all that, you're talking about doing, what did you say, a questionnaire ahead of time? What is that? Before
the same thing that we do the same thing that we do every day in every building across the district now for our people that are in the building is it's a daily COVID questionnaire.
Okay.
That's required for our staff, meaning our coaches, myself included, my assistant, my trainer, and every single student athlete before they're able to participate in either a practice or a game. I will state, I do agree with the testing piece. However, I would hate to be the only district across the state that holds our kids back because we not testing when no other district, or it's not even a state mandate for testing.
Okay.
I'd really hate to be the one doing that.
All right, let me go up top to Mr. Iovino.
Well, I'm listening here, and I have to comment, student representative, once again, she's making an abundant amount of good sense. I think from the local level, since we are at the local level, we can make that mandate if it becomes necessary to do that, even if we are the only system that tests. We're concerned, safety has always been our number one priority. Whether we're negotiating back to school issues, whatever we negotiate, safety is the number one issue. So I think that we can mandate that. But my question is, and I guess it's going to go to the superintendent, if we had to do that, what would be the cost factor? And I'm putting you on the spot now because you probably don't have those figures, but would there be funding available from any of the funding sources that we have gotten under the CARES Act, for example, to cover that testing?
So the test cost about $70, $75 a test. I don't know where we would stand on that, with respect to what we have for resources available. I would also just like to say a COVID test is only good for that moment in time.
Right, it's a snapshot, right.
It's a snapshot. So in order for this to be effective, and I think this is one of the things we'd be looking at going forward, is hopefully to develop some sort of surveillance testing that could be done more regularly. I know that the Malden Education Association has asked for something like that for when there's a return to school. We're looking at options for that. But the testing would be fairly expensive. I mean, we'd be probably looking at a couple hundred, student athletes for the winter. That could get taxing on our resources. And then we would have to have some partner to administer this if you did. I know what we're finding is the daily questionnaire has been very effective because it's real time. Did you wake up with a fever? Did you have one yesterday? You're answering it in real time right then and there. And we're finding, a number of staff who, are answering yes to the question and not coming in. I think that, if we went with testing, there'd have to be a discussion around the resources on that. I think it would have to be something that would be done on a regular basis if you were going to do that. Because I think all that you'd be getting would be a snapshot of that time, so if you did it at the beginning of the season, I guess you'd be assured that there was nobody positive, but then going forward, where would that come from? So if that answers the question on the resources.
Superintendent, right off the bat, I think for the students alone, that's roughly $7,000, not including the coaches, the assistant coaches, and everybody else involved. So, then you factor that in over the course of the season. That could, like you said, be quite the proposition. Let me ask you, Mr. Conifrey, what's been the feedback from we had Ms. Davidson speak. What about your interaction with the student athletes and the families? What's been the feedback now that this has been announced?
They'll be upset that December 14th is not the start date, but I think they will be happy that January 11th is an actual real date and something that has been, by the time, put it this way, give you a frame of reference, it'll be, by the time we actually have an interscholastic competition in mid-January, it'll be almost a year since we last competed, last February.
Has anybody opted out?
11 months. As Lynn Public Schools has opted out. However,
no, I mean, have any of our students declined to come back for the winter season, or is it too early to say?
It's too early to say. We've opened up our registration process, and maybe a kid here or there, but as far as masses go, I wouldn't be able to tell until all registration was thoroughly reviewed.
But your hunch is the vast majority will participate.
Yeah, we have over 100 registered at the moment.
And I know, Charlie, you've been very passionate about this over the months I've spoken with you. For a lot of these student athletes, this is their lifeline. I mean, without this, they're not going on to higher education, correct?
I would say that back in August, I didn't think the downfall of not having sports would be as outrageous or egregious as it is. Speaking with members of the Captain's Council on a monthly basis and some other individual student athletes consistently, you can hear it in their voice, see it in their face. It's very, very difficult time, and that's just the athletes. That's not. They're struggling, put it that way. And if athletics for the longest time has been an outlet for even the highest achieving academic learner, but even more so for the student athlete who just barely gets by. Athletics is an outlet for them. We're not talking about going to the NFL or the NBA. We're talking about providing, life experiences and interaction with their peers and interaction with their coaches and providing a safe space for them to have an outlet for all of the stuff that they deal with on a daily basis. It's been hard, a long time.
All right, there you have it, everyone. So, Madam Clerk, just remind me, the motion was made by who?
Ms. Spadafora,
It was seconded by?
Mr. Iovino.
Okay, any other questions? Because I know we got a lot else on the agenda. Just Ms. Luong and then Mr. McCarthy, okay? And let's see if we can move along.
Thank you. Just really quick question. Is there any reason, I know $7,000 per student, it's a lot of money. And I mean, it is the safety of the students that we have to think about, but is there any reason why as a city, we can't reach out to one of the testing sites that already do the rapid testing to see if they could put some special times aside to actually test our athletes? I mean, that's kind of, it's free test. You know what I'm saying? Can we look at something like that to say, hey, I know there's one in Everett during the week and then the other side of Everett's on the weekend, but maybe they'd be willing to partner with us to say, look, we want to Mr. Oteri, Superintendent Oteri's point, if we do consecutive testing, maybe we can come up with a schedule to say over the course of our season, we'd like our athletes tested 6 times. How can we help each other? Because I really think I'm very budget conscious, but this is the safety of our students. And, I just feel like that this is more important for us to figure out a solution to this than it is to let our students not be tested and not keep track of that. That's just my thinking.
You'd be willing to look into that, Mr. Conifrey?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. McCarthy, and then Ms. Spadafora, and then let's try and get back to the rest of the agenda if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on the question that I asked Mr. Conifrey earlier about regarding letting participants in during the regular season. So is that a part of the motion, or is that only for the senior game, like senior night games?
Just senior night games.
Senior night.
Just senior night? Okay.
That's it. That's part of the plan.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents are not going to be too pleased about that, to be honest with you, because they may have senior athletes where they've been going for 4 years, any sport, and they all of a sudden now are shut out by seeing their son or daughter playing in a game. I understand, as to what Mr. Conifrey said, you're doing a streaming service online. Now, is that free?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, it is
100% free through the NFHS. We installed these cameras a couple years ago, both at our stadium, McDonald's Stadium, and within the Finn Gym. Unfortunately, we don't have one of those cameras in the pool area, so we'll be using our own and streaming that live. Once again, this goes to our main point of health and safety. The less amount of people in a building, the better. I think if you polled parents, make or break, do you want your kid to play, or do you want to see your kid play in person or online? I would hope that they would say, I want my kid to participate, and we're going to do whatever it takes to be necessary. Also, I will say statewide, there's going to be very few districts who allow spectators, very few, for this specific reason. And yes, it is sad. It stinks. Like I said before, all of this stinks, and we're just trying to get back to some sense of normalcy for our kids. And
Mr. McCarthy, I think one thing we can feel confident about, if that was a major issue, I don't think you'd have, I thought Mr. Conifrey said around 100 registrations already. So I think they've weighed that as to whether or not it makes sense for them to participate. And knowing our Malden families, I think they wanted what's best to give their kids this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Because again, what Mr. Conifrey's told me repeatedly over the years, this is their way up. So if they're not in this, chances are some of them may not go on to an institution of higher education. So, Ms. Spadafora.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question, Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
then we'll move forward.
I'm going to say I'll keep it very, very quick. I just want to circle back in regards to the testing. And as much as I would love to offer testing to every athletic student, I do have a bit of an issue when it comes to equity. We have teachers and students that are currently, in the schools now that we are not offering testing to. So I just want to be mindful of, acknowledging that, we do have people currently in the schools, and I just have an issue with holding one level of persons to a higher standard. And as much as I want to see them playing, I just do have an issue with us even considering looking into the fact of offering testing for one subset group and not for all that are in right now. So thank you.
All right, there you have it, everybody. So we have the motion. It's been seconded. Let's have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Drummond, Mr. Froio,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. So that carries unanimously. Mr. Conifrey, keep us posted, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Charlie.
Go Malden, Charlie. All right, so members of the school committee, that takes care of item 1 under motions and resolutions. Why don't we stay down there for a little bit if there's no objection? Chair hears none. Let's talk about the updating of student handbooks. Ms. Luong.
Hi. So as I was reading through our student handbooks, there's just some places in there that I feel that need to be updated, as well as adding COVID remote learning information to our student handbooks. So I'm proposing that this go to policy to further look into it.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. Any discussion? Chair has none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Let's go to Mr. Weldai, who I think has a recommendation regarding public comment guidelines going forward. Mr. Weldai.
Let me pull it up for us. So the policy subcommittee had 2 meetings since our last school committee meeting. I'll save the policy update for above, but one of the pieces the chair asked us to consider after the last meeting was our public comment guidelines for the school committee. We actually did a little bit of research to see what our counterparts in the council were doing and how we were operating, and it turns out that our public comment guidelines in our posted agendas are actually better and more thorough. So we actually we made one very small tweak to it, which you'll all see in the, it's in bright red in the draft that was sent to you. And it's just to add one line to our already existent statement on public comment. And it's after it says, if you are unable to participate and would still like to offer comment, you may email your name, home address, and comment to Shirley at sdori@maldenps.org prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Please keep the written comments under 300 words. And then the policy committee is proposing adding in the sentence, these comments received will be read into the record during public comment, which shall last for no more than 30 minutes. And then it finishes with, if you're unable to participate electronically, please contact Shirley with a phone number to reach her.
And so Mr. Weldai, what was the vote of the committee?
3-0. We were missing one member, 3-0.
And these guidelines, are they only in effect for this format or for when we get back together as well?
I think that has to be determined. I think right now I would say these are for while we are holding the meetings remotely, but I think we all have expressed a desire to figure out some element of retaining the Zoom or the public participation capability for families post-pandemic. So I think we'll say for the time being, while this is our stated, because it's not a policy change per se, we're just looking at changing the guidelines of what's on our agenda.
All right, very good. So, Mr. Weldai, you want to make the motion, I presume?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Seconded by Mr. Iovino. So there you have it, everybody. Any questions, queries, qualms, concerns? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody here opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Let's stay in motions and resolutions. The final item I'm showing is MCAS resolution, sponsored by Mr. Weldai, and he's joined by the entire school committee. So, Mr. Weldai, take it away.
Thank you, and very pleased to be joined by the entire school committee. And I'd like to, I think, give credit to where credit's due. I tweaked this a little bit, but the idea came from a community member, Kevin Brill, who is a high school principal in Boston. This came out of the Boston Heads of Schools Association and the Boston Teachers Union, but it's a resolution geared at the state on MCAS and high stakes testing. A little more strongly worded than the resolution that was passed at the MASC Legislative Assembly a month ago. So it says for the public, whereas we know that administering the MCAS this school year will disproportionately impact our economically disadvantaged students and our students of color, and whereas our communities are already facing significant challenges and we seek to prioritize the removal of barriers and provide opportunities for post-secondary success rather than dedicating precious time and resources, human and otherwise, to this assessment. Whereas we know that administering the MCAS this school year will likely take away valuable instructional time already lost and compromised. Whereas we know that the reliability and validity of the assessment will be severely limited in the current context due to the variety of both school and home conditions across our various schools in the Commonwealth. Whereas the results will reflect the degree to which the current public health crisis impacts different cities and towns rather than the degree of student learning. And whereas administering the MCAS this year will only add to a destructive deficit-based achievement gap narrative and not achieve a positive impact on our students' social, emotional, and academic growth, be it resolved that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education take all necessary steps to cancel all MCAS testing for the 2020 to 2021 academic year.
All right, there you have it. Mr. Weldai, and did that go through committee or is that
right from the floor?
Right on the floor, okay. So motion by Mr. Weldai, seconded by Ms. Spadafora. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. That carries unanimously. That takes care of motions and resolutions. Now, subcommittee reports and discussions, Mr. Weldai, does that take care of policy and procedures?
Very briefly, Policy and Procedures Committee met. We did the public comment guidelines, but we're also in the midst of discussing attendance issues for remote learning during the pandemic. We've had 2 meetings. We have another meeting coming up next Monday, and we hope to have something to bring to the committee in January. I want to give a special thank you to the superintendent, but also all of our building principals who have taken the time to join us during the past 2 meetings to give their input on what they've been seeing.
All right, very good. Any questions on that? Chair has none. Superintendent Search Committee, Mr. Weldai.
All right, last one. So Ms. Spadafora and I, along with Maria Louise from the Mayor's Office, have had multiple meetings with Ray Shurtleff, our consultant from the Collins Center, to prepare for the search. The position has been posted. They're in the middle of an aggressive recruitment push. The timeline that the center has put together is aggressive, and they're planning backwards with a projected date of bringing finalists to the full committee by late February, early March. We'll have more updates for the committee as a whole, I think, in the coming week or 2. But tonight we were going to choose our parent volunteers, or parent representatives to the search committee. We had a group of about 40 parents, a little bit more than 40 parents, volunteer to serve as part of the search group. They identified themselves as a parent of either pre-K through 6, 7 through 12, or special education, in some cases multiple. And in an effort to, Malden is such an amazing, diverse community of everything, thought, race, socioeconomic status, etc., that we figured the best way to do it would be randomly, as long as there were some representatives of each group. So with the permission of the chair, I'm actually going to share my screen.
Okay.
And oh, I can. I definitely can. All right, let me see. There we go. All right, so we've got 3 parent volunteers. I queued up 3 different lists: special education, pre-K through 6, and 7 through 12. So here's our first. This is the grades pre-K through 6 parent volunteer. Jessica Vasquez. All right, so we will follow up with Jessica Vasquez post-meeting. Let's see. Our grades 7 through 12. Really do love this. Heather Barry. All right, we will follow up with Miss Barry post-meeting. And special education. Rebecca Brooks. All right, so we have our 3, let me see if I can stop share. Our 3 parent volunteers. We will hook up with them post-meeting and we'll be able to give the committee a breakdown of the full group within the week or so.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Weldai. I just started the meeting with that. That was exciting.
Thank you, Ms. Spadafora, for all the work behind the scenes that she's been doing towards this as well.
Yeah, hats off, Ms. Spadafora. Mr. Weldai's been keeping me updated, so well done. All right, so there you have it. One more committee report. Mr. Iovino, did you want to give an update on enrollment?
Yes, I do. Our enrollment data right now shows a student enrollment of 6,238, 6,238. We picked up 16 youngsters from the 20th of November, and those increases came both in the kindergarten and in the preschool.
All right, very good. Any questions of Mr. Iovino? Ms. Spadafora?
Just a quick question, only because I don't have numbers in front of me. Although we are up 16, what are we down year over year compared to 2000?
Last year, I can email you that number. It's in another file, but I'll be happy to email it to you.
No problem. I could probably dig it up if I look through my paperwork myself. I just wasn't sure if you had that off the top of your head.
I think we're down in the area of about 357 kids.
All right,
but I can give you the exact.
Why don't you get that out to us tomorrow, Soup? Okay.
Certainly. Yep. I'll get it out.
All right, very good. Thank you. And now, looking at the agenda, what we're going to do next is hear from our superintendent, who will give a condensed version of the superintendent's report. Then we will entertain motions of personal privilege, followed by a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of collective bargaining, principal contracts, and pending litigation. And then we will move adjournment. Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to formally welcome Juliana Davidson, who will be joining us as the student representative for the school committee. We look forward to her feedback and contributions. I think we've already seen that tonight. She is also a student athlete. She's a member of the lacrosse team. She's the secretary of the Science National Honor Society, recipient of the Pillar Award, a peer tutor, and also worked with the Anti-Defamation League here at the high school. So welcome, Juliana, to this year's school committee. Special education audit is still in progress. Families who need translators are currently being contacted so that they can provide input. If anyone has not yet been contacted, they can reach out to Assistant Superintendent Pamela McDonald, whose contact details are provided on the special education page of the Malden Public Schools website. The completed report will be provided at the January 11th school committee meeting. On our school reopening, we're working in collaboration with the Malden Education Association on a reentry of students into the next phase of reentry, stage 4 of hybrid learning. We're targeting a return of all staff to the buildings on Monday, January 11th. Our Human Resources Department, in collaboration with the Malden Education Association, sent out a staff survey on Friday, December 4th, so we can get an accurate account of which staff in which schools, grades, and classes will be able to teach in the buildings beginning on January 11th. Their responses must be received by Human Resources by December 11th. Once we obtain this information, we'll also be doing a binding survey of families about whether they will return to in-person learning or remain in remote learning. Over the next several days, we'll be working with the administrative team to develop this plan. It could be a gradual transition with our starting with the youngest learners and then phasing into the next group or grade of students. We will begin to plan the reentry and keep our families informed once the plans have solidified. The guiding principle of this return will be the health and safety of all students and staff. We know that our safety protocols and procedures that we currently have in place have been effective and continue to be effective with the return of more students and staff to the buildings. We will adhere to mandatory mask wearing, 6 feet distancing, hand washing, sanitizing, and all the vigilance that accompanies this. We did get our survey results back from the initial survey. We surveyed all families about whether they wanted to return or come back into in-person learning, and it was about a 50-50 split. 49.4% said that they would return to in-person learning, while 50.6% said that this time they preferred to stay in remote learning. Again, we will resurvey families once we have a more definitive plan of moving forward, reveal that so that parents will have a much more informed decision and make that something that will be coming up towards the end of the month, right around the holidays. We've had a minimum of positive COVID cases within the district. It's really a tribute, as I said, to the aforementioned precautions, protocols, and procedures that are in place and observed by our students and staff. Also, the spacing of our students in their home schools, our high indoor air quality, and the vigilance of staff has been exceptional, and I wanted to make sure that that was pointed out. An update from our Student Services Department. Social emotional update. As we said this summer, we purchased Panorama Education. It's a social emotional survey tool that we will use, and we will be rolling out a comprehensive social emotional survey in January, February. We're looking forward to getting that off the ground sometime late January with the district-wide social emotional learning survey. Athletic Director and Director of Health and Wellness, Charlie Conifrey, as well as our Director of Guidance, Erin Craven, have been the leads on this. We will then host a professional development on interpreting and utilizing the data as a leadership team. I also would like to let everybody know about the new Student Services website, as I announced last month. That was almost up and running. It is up and running now at, and I'll post this on our website, sites.google.com/maldenps.org, Malden Student Services/home. We'll get that out to everybody. Mid-year and final exams at the high school level. As we all know, this is not a normal year by any means. And while we look forward to normal times in the future, we have been in conversations with directors and lead teachers for input regarding adjustments needed to ensure that we maximize our time with students to meet the academic and social emotional needs. To that end, one of the decisions that we have made is to put a pause on mid-year and final exams for the 2020-2021 school year. We do this now so that the staff and students have time to process the changes and plan accordingly. Some points to keep in mind. Mid-year and finals are an important part of the Malden High School experience for a number of reasons. Therefore, the traditional mid-year and final exams for this year only will not be administered. You will not see a column for these exams on the report card, and each of the 4 quarters will be weighed equally at 25% for each term, with semester courses being weighed at 50% for each of the 2 terms. Assessments are still happening at every level, every quarter, to know where students are at during any point in the quarter. Students will continue, as always, to be assessed on their skills so that teachers have data on student growth as they normally do each quarter. Lead teachers, department members, and directors will have conversations in the coming weeks to discuss current and future assessments and how to use them to gauge student progress, adjust instruction, and match students to the individual interventions that they need. A number of considerations went into this. One was the social emotional needs of both staff and students. We placed an emphasis on formative assessments and providing supports for students. Content of the exams does not align to the curriculum this year due to the current format of the school year. An abundance of standardized testing that overlaps with the exam schedule creates a burden on both teachers and students. The exam integrity itself, not knowing if exams could have been administered in person or in a remote setting, is also something we considered. Teachers could better use the time to analyze current student data and plan interventions and instruction for the second half of the year. Also, students don't typically do as well in the exams as they do during the regular quarters, so pausing the exams will not hurt or punish any student's overall grade. Pausing both the mid-year and final exams at this time will allow students and teachers to plan accordingly, and equity issues related to the semesters, in other words, not having an exam at the end of semester 1, but having one at the end of semester 2, are eliminated. Mid-year assessments at the 6 through 8 level will continue to be formative in nature and do not have a place on the report card or bearing on a student's overall average. Assessments in core subject areas will move forward, and data generated from the assessments will be used to inform instruction and match students with appropriate interventions. Directors will be working with principals and teachers in the coming weeks to provide messaging around these assessments. In general, we continue to assess our students at all grade levels using tools like IXL and iReady, along with district level assessments and benchmarks to identify areas for improvement at the individual, classroom, and grade level. Remote learning assistants. We recently advertised for a new temporary position of remote learning assistants. These are part-time positions funded through the CARES Act money and will support our K-8 students. Whether we are in person or remote, those hired for the role will assist students in need of support in the areas of English language, arts, and math during the school day. Principals will work with the teachers to identify students in need of help and match those assistants to those students and their teachers. An update on early literacy tutoring. Through a grant from DESE, we'll be working with Springboard Education to bring after-school tutoring to approximately 300 students across the district. We are in preliminary discussions to begin this work beginning in February or March. Through the grant, teachers will connect with families of targeted students through virtual home visits and provide approximately 90 minutes of small group instruction each week to students. While much of the interventions for our high school students, while much of the focus is on our younger learners because they are more dependent on teacher and family support, we are currently looking at Q1 data at the high school level to determine how to best help students in grades 9 through 12 who show signs of struggling. We have a vacation learning grant. Through a grant from DESE, we have been awarded funds to conduct a small vacation learning program that will take place virtually over the February and April breaks. This grant will target students in grades 3 to 5 with synchronous sessions Tuesday through Friday each of these weeks. This grade span will allow us to focus on students with the greatest need who will be able to access remote synchronous learning with the greatest amount of independence. We will use district level data to identify students who benefit the most from this offering. For example, our district already uses iReady and IXL to assess students' strengths and challenges in ELA and math. In addition, the district will also have assessment data from DIBELS that will help inform decisions about participation. We will start planning after the break. Once we determine how many spaces are feasible, we will work with principals and coaches to identify students with the greatest needs. Our McKinney-Vento Act. Through the McKinney-Vento grant funds, we will be again offering Saturday programming to our McKinney-Vento students. We will use these funds to contract with housing families to provide Saturday activities in a virtual platform. The district connects to the housing family staff, who in turn provide materials and programming to students for several hours each Saturday. We piloted this program last spring and are happy to have the funding to continue it in 2021. Snow days. While we're in winter and we had some snow this weekend, on days with inclement weather, snow days will be called for students participating in in-person learning, but it will be substituted with remote learning on the affected days. This will mean that when we cancel school due to inclement weather, that day would not need to be made up per the recommendation for the Commissioner of Education for this year only. So because all districts had to provide a remote learning platform for this year, the commissioner has said that when you call a snow day, it would not need to be made up because we do have plans for remote learning. And in Malden, we have a one-to-one initiative, so all students would be connected. So that gives a little bit of relief to some folks, I'm sure. Those people that would in person would just be, we would call school off if there is snow that would prohibit that, and that would not need to be made up at the end of the year. The Abbott Binex Now antigen testing update. We became one of the communities that was eligible for this testing program. We hope to soon receive the test kits. It is a rapid 15-minute antigen test that Malden is qualified for. We submitted our application. Nurse Tremendozzi participated in a webinar on Friday. We are awaiting training for our nursing staff. The use of the Binex Now test can rapidly identify symptomatic individuals with COVID-19 so that appropriate isolation and contact tracing can begin quickly. Again, as I said, Ms. Tremendozzi is working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to obtain the kits, the consent form, and the training for our school nurses. I also want to inform the committee and the district that on Friday, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education at our Urban Superintendents Network announced they are seeking pilot sites to begin surveillance testing for COVID-19. This is through the Shaw Foundation and in partnership with the Broad Institute. There's a potential that we could get COVID testing for our students and staff that could come down to $25 a test, but could also be pooled for up to 10 tests at once. For instance, like a classroom for the same $25 test. This is the program that Medford, Somerville, and Watertown are participating in through Tufts University as essentially a beta testing site. They were specifically seeking urban elementary districts. I expressed Malden's interest to the Associate Commissioner who is heading up the project. I was informed today that they were going forward to process us, and we will hear whether we have become eligible for that or not. And I will keep the committee updated as to our eligibility and progression through the application process. Again, it would be for the elementary level, and there may be some funding available that would go with this. So we're excited that this could be something that we could use as surveillance testing going forward. Excuse me. The Student Voice Project. In the spring of 2020, Mr. Mastrangelo and the MHS administrative team collaborated about ways to provide Malden High School students with an opportunity to have their voices heard. Excuse me, an opportunity for students to take the lead and share their voice and their lens of what is happening in the world, as well as at the halls of Malden High School. This project will allow students to, quote, take the lead in sharing their experiences at Malden High and help the school face situations that will be potentially uncomfortable, yet necessary for Malden High School to reach its fullest potential and provide a truly equitable and anti-racist school for all students. Faculty advisors have been put in place to support the students with this transformative work, and the students will also consult with Dr. Amante Jackson throughout the school year. In late October, Malden High School students, staff, and families had the opportunity to participate in a survey provided by Youth Truth. Malden High School has partnered with this organization to facilitate our surveys and provide support in data collection and analysis. Over 1,500 students at Malden High School participated in the survey. That's 89% of our students. That was terrific. The project has begun and students will request time with the school committee later in the year to share their feelings. It's ambitious work and one that requires ambitious students. We have 20 students that represent the diversity of the high school and our city. It is not a one-year initiative, but rather an everyday plan to move our school forward. The Student Voice Project will remain beyond the 2021 school year. It will become a fabric of the school and allow our kids to have a major voice in the evolution and growth of Malden High School in years to come. Boyle House Principal Stephanie Sibley is serving as the administrative advisor to this work. She has worked relentlessly and tirelessly to get the project off the ground. She spearheaded a similar project while working in Boston Public Schools years ago, and her experience and knowledge of this work and the changes that come with it will be invaluable to help guide Malden High School. Technology updates. Headsets for the access testing have arrived and are in the building. We ordered enough to supply each student with their own individual headset. Therefore, we would not have to do any sharing. We will strictly adhere to CDC standards for all of our testing. Parent training videos are available on the Malden High School Family Resource site under Tech Supports for Students and Family page. A link to the resource site can be found on the district's homepage. Video topics including submitting photos of assignments using a phone, Google Meets best practices, using translation features in Google, and what are extensions and how to use them are all found on this site. In January, families can anticipate being able to check out ebooks from the Malden School Library. We signed up for a free service called Sora. It's an overdrive service. Sora will allow students to access and search a digital catalog of over 400 children's and young adult books and 37 audiobooks and check them out of the library. Sora also partners with our Malden Public Library to allow students to check out children's books from their digital collection. Librarians are working to roll the service out to students starting sometime in January. An update on the ELC principal search. Mr. Rick Rogers, the interim principal at the Early Learning Center, will be staying through this school year. I think that in my notes to you this weekend, he was looking to leave at the end of January. He has been able to change that to stay with us through the school year. We're really excited about that. He informed me of that this afternoon. He will also assist us in the identification of a new leader at the ELC later on this spring. We're excited to have Rick continue here in Malden. We will be reposting the position later this year for a full-time permanent position, and Mr. Rogers has agreed to help Human Resources with that search and transition. We are very grateful for a donation of 250 face shields from Malden's Neighbors Helping Neighbors. I will be picking them up this week from Barbara Kim. These will be used by our staff who need the shields in the course of their work. I'd like to thank Barbara Kim and Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors as a great community partner throughout this pandemic. They've done some wonderful, wonderful work. Malden Public Schools was awarded $110,000 through a state grant to purchase a food delivery truck. This will be an enormous help in providing food to our families. We are working out the details. Tony Mertz has taken the lead on this. We put in for this sometime early in the summer and just found out the other day. This will be a game changer for us to help alleviate food insecurity, especially during this pandemic and going forward. We will be looking at strategies and best ways to deploy this going forward as well. Tony is speccing out a truck now. This would be something that would have refrigeration, heating, and freezing capacities to it. It would not be a food truck that would be preparing fresh food like you would find, on the street corner to, the chicken and rice guys or something like that. It would be really a delivery truck that would have those features. We would see this as a real asset to the district and to our families, especially during the summer, to go to parks, keeping food warm, cold, and frozen when needed. So we're really, really excited about this. I think it'll be a way in which we can get more food out to our families. I would also like to again make a plug for our free meal distribution. You can pick up breakfast, lunch, and dinners at every one of our K-8 schools, as well as Malden High School, Monday through Friday, 10:30 to 1. It's free to any student in Malden. You can pick up multiple meals for other, you don't have to pick up just for your kid. We've allowed, sometimes a group of neighbors come in, pick them up for the neighborhood kids so that there's a shared experience and collection of that. So please get there and get those meals. They're excellent. Our food service director, Omar Hernandez, has done an outstanding job of providing really nutritious, freshly made meals. In closing, we have winter break that starts on December 24th and continues through January 3rd. We'll be reopening schools on January 4th. Just a reminder that on Wednesday, December 23rd, it is an 11 a.m. dismissal. That is a remote day for all, but we will shut down at 11 o'clock. Food will be served during the week of winter vacation on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. That Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. There will not be weekend food pickup then, but we will resume full food distribution on Monday, January 4th. And then lastly, in closing, I would like to remind students, families, and staff to follow all necessary health guidelines so that we can keep ourselves and everyone else safe around us during this pandemic. This year started out very differently, and how it is ending is the same way. I admire and appreciate all the effort from staff, students, and families in stepping out of their comfort zones to learn new things and adapting as best as we possibly can. And that concludes my report for this evening, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's take a few questions. Mr. Iovino.
Just a quick question to the superintendent, if I could. Mr. Oteri, did you say that we have been awarded, or are we waiting approval on that Binox testing? We have been approved or not?
We've been approved. We were
Okay.
one of the 160 communities. We're waiting for the tests to arrive, and in order for those to arrive, we have to have the training and from the state. They have to
Okay.
train our school nurses.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've been awarded it.
Thank you, Mr. Iovino. Other questions? Ms. Spadafora, and then Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few, but I'm going to keep it very brief. In regards to the snow days, does that mean we need to amend our calendar? Because right now we have 5 snow days built into that calendar. If we're not going to be using snow days and we're going to be doing remote learning during those, should we be amending our school calendar? I feel like snow days are...
Those are tacked on at the end, Ms. Spadafora, so I think, I don't have the calendar in front of me, it's out there, but I think our last day is either the 17th or 18th, so it wouldn't, I think the calendar has what would be the 180, up to the 185th day.
Yep.
That's what we slot there. So this year, as you may recall, the commissioner waived 10 days, so we have 170 school days, and I think that the calendar provides up to the 175th. So we wouldn't need to amend that. That would just be in the event that we had to cancel school.
Okay. Really quick, I just want to give a huge shout out to Tony Martz on the food truck, because I've been in conversation with her since, late spring, midsummer. And this was such a huge win for the district. I'm so excited to see us get more food out to families that need it. I think this is going to make a tremendous impact for the city. Last question on the library book borrowing, Sora. So I don't know if you have if you know a ton of background on it, but I'm just curious on the ability for those students that are special ed, maybe dyslexic. I'm familiar with a certain program that we use, Learning Alley, where the books can be read to you. And I was just curious on the Sora if those that are students that aren't reading yet, if they can still borrow books and it has the ability for the books to be read to them, like text to speech, or if it's strictly book borrowing for, visual learning. I just want to make sure that we're encompassing all aspects of our learning abilities.
I don't know the answer to that specifically, but I believe Sora is an Overdrive service. Overdrive is a library service in which you download books. I don't know I can check with Ms. Brennan, our integrated technology person, but I don't think Sora provides anything except the portal in which the book comes to the device.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a way that you can then integrate that with another software. I will find out though.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 quick comments and a question. The comments are quick. The mid-year and final exams and assessments, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Chase. I think that is, I applaud that move big time. And the rationale, just seeing it written out and listed, thinking about how we value the students and the staff SEL piece, acknowledging the questions around integrity of the exam, the value of teacher time, acknowledging that this year's content mapping is different. I think seeing what you wrote in your report around the exams made me wish that was the language that was coming out of the state around their exams, and I thought that was phenomenal, so thank you.
Maybe they'll follow our lead.
Maybe hey, send it right down the street, carrier pigeon. A big shout out to Barbara Kim and Malden Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and I think through Barbara Kim. I think a backdoor shout out to Michelle Luong, who really spent a lot of time, introducing Barbara to the community and making sure that those connections were made. But Barbara's really taken on the schools in a sense of getting the face shields, and she did some mask drives before, and we all benefit from her service just as a community member. And speaking of under the radar, I'm going to echo Ms. Spadafora and say how cool the food trucks are and how thankful we are to have Tony and Omar and the whole team working behind the scenes to make stuff like this happen. I mean, food security could not be a more important issue. And I think, I hope folks at home understand that while we've all been home and while we've been, having school via Zoom and Google Meet and meetings via Zoom, and Tony's been hard at work behind the scenes, making sure that every single child in Malden gets free lunch, free breakfast. Making sure that food is something that's able to be made more available as time goes on. And those food trucks, I mean, talk about getting food to kids in the winter, in the summer when it's too hot to want to walk all the way to whatever school. That's amazing. So big credit to the team for really putting that together. And Tony likes to lay low behind the scenes. You can see her name on this screen under the black box. She's working. And my only question actually echoes sort of Ms. Spadafora's around the snow day piece. And I'm actually honestly just wondering, is there a value to, what am I trying to ask? There are going to be days when inclement weather prevents people from getting connectivity. Are there still going to be opportunities where snow days per se might be called? Because I'm thinking we've only had one or two real storms so far, but we've seen Wi-Fi outages or power outages because of it. So I guess what I'm wondering is does this change preclude us from, calling those days? Or will we still be able to take, I think what Ms. Spadafora probably named better than I did, inclement weather days or something around that? Because I think if we can't get people onto the computer, is it really going to be a worthwhile day to say we still expect you to be Zooming and learning?
I think we could look at that. I mean, often it's not like the entire city goes down. I mean, we've had a couple, with some of the rainstorms we've had recently, we had certain sections of the city that lost power for a certain amount of time. I think if you were looking at something that's more widespread, it would probably be something that would rise to the level of more like a state of emergency. Okay. I'm thinking like a blizzard. In that case, I think that we may need to look at that. But I mean, it's almost like penalizing students and staff because the power went down and they'd have to make up those days down at the end of the year. I don't know if that's... Well,
I guess maybe that's a great point. So I guess maybe to rephrase the question, would there be less of a, is there flexibility in terms of maybe you as a superintendent could say, today's an asynchronous day. Even though it's a snow day, you don't have to log on to morning meeting and XYZ if we're worried about power outages and things. Yeah, and I think we would probably, usually snow days don't sneak up on us, usually, and I presume that we would be doing the same way we have in the past, where we would be meeting, with the emergency team in the city and start planning out, the snow emergency with the mayor, the public works, police, fire, public health, and we sit around and talk about the parking and all that. So I think we'd probably have some lead time to that we could say in light of there's going to be high winds tomorrow, internet connections could be down. Here's the work in advance. I think we could work on some plans like that. I think that's reasonable. And I think it would be helpful and maybe take the pressure off of some people who, have sort of a spotty connection at times. Certain sections of the city tend to be more prone to it. The Linden section, there's something there with National Grid, and I see Juliana nodding her head. If the wind is blowing a certain way with even a small amount of moisture, we seem to lose it in certain sections. This most recent one was with the heavy rains we had that hit an underground cable and took out good chunks of housing on Salem Street for power. It was short-lived.
an hour, 90 minutes, and it wasn't really cold, so people weren't too inconvenienced. But we did have families that felt, like, oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of a Zoom. They think I just dropped off. So yeah, we're very flexible on that. I think our staff has been very accommodating. I think Juliana had a comment to follow up on that.
Let me just see, Mr. Weldai, are you all set?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's jump to Ms. Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Weldai. I just wanted to add in kind of a student input. So as a student, I've experienced about 3 power outages, and they've ranged from the smallest gust of wind to my mom's hairdryer. And I completely acknowledge that our staff is kind of flexible and they do like work with the students, of course. But at the same time, the stress that's like put onto students just for that, as like an honors student, when my screen just goes black and I'm like stuck not knowing what's happening in the class and what I'm missing, just that whole worrying is just enough for me to like kind of not know what to do and kind of look for another solution. So I wanted to second Mr. Weldai's idea for asynchronous, because I feel that this gives the opportunity, one, if our Wi-Fi connection is going down, we can hope that it will be back up and that we can finish our work later in the day if we must. And it also gives us the opportunity to kind of email teachers, take initiative, and not feel penalized for anything, no matter what. And this is also acknowledging that teachers do not penalize us, but at the same time, that student guilt is very much there and very present. And I think it's something worth mentioning. Thank you.
And Ms. Davidson, while we're with you, I saw you nodding when the superintendent was talking about the game plan relative to exams. So that's something you agree with as well, and you think your classmates do?
Very much so, Mr. Mayor. After hearing a lot of frustration over something as small as a quiz, I can't imagine the frustration that students would face for a test that not only kind of validates if they will graduate, but one that kind of validates how they feel in school. Just taking the test alone, I know if you have a question and you don't know the answer, that's already frustrating, but I can't imagine how people will feel when their Wi-Fi is going out while they're taking the quiz, the test, standardized test, or just their home environment isn't safe, or even if we do have the chance to take the test somewhere like a testing area, I can't imagine the stress that would cause for students and how it wouldn't really be worth our stress for that. Thank you.
Very good. All right, any other questions of members? Ms. Spadafora.
Yeah, just really quickly in regards to the snow days, again, I just want to kind of follow up just because we have been meeting with our policy and procedures subcommittee, and I think it has come up in conversation in regards to inclement weather. So I guess I'm just asking that we look at it in more depth, just because it seems like we have some really good ideas and thoughts, and knowing that we don't want to penalize anybody for not being able to log on, especially when it's out of, our own hands when it comes to weather, or just a simple Verizon truck that happens to be on your street doing work for the day, and maybe only 5 houses are out, but your house is one of them. How we can make sure that we're not penalizing students for missing time. So I just wanted to add that in when it comes to inclement weather, internet outages per se, and we are looking at it in policy and procedure, and I think we'll look at it even in more depth.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. So we have a lot to do in executive session, so if there's no objection, we'll now move to personal privilege. Are there any quick points of personal privilege before we entertain a motion to go into executive session? Mr. Iovino.
I just want to take this opportunity to wish our staff, our students, and our families, and my colleagues on the school committee a very happy holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy Hanukkah. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for points? Let's go to Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you. Just a quick point, BB parent conferences will be held remotely on December 15th, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So please keep an eye out for links, remote links, Zoom links, or Google Meet links in that manner. As well as report cards went out this week. So those that are in 1st through 4th grade, those have been mailed, but 5 through 8 are posted on our X2 portal. And I lastly just want to say welcome to Miss Davidson. It's a pleasure to have you sitting up here. And honestly, after sitting up here for an hour and a half or so, you have proven that you deserve this seat. And lastly, congratulations to those volunteers, those parent volunteers that were chosen tonight, for the superintendent search committee. I'm looking forward to hitting the ground running with everybody and starting the process. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Weldai.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I echo what Ms. Spadafora said and echo what Mr. Iovino said, and, to my colleagues, to the community, whatever you celebrate, I hope you celebrate it safely and celebrate it well. It's been fun watching the city pivot, do the tree lighting virtually. We'll see the menorah lighting virtually this Thursday, in great part due to Lori Ardai, Jess Slavin, and Gary pulling that together for our community. But it's a very weird year. But whatever you celebrate, I hope you celebrate it safely, celebrate it well. And I'm very excited that the next time that we all get together, it will no longer be 2020.
Yes. Well said. Okay. Anybody else? Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really fast, I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. To whatever you celebrate. Mostly everyone here has said the same thing. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Spadafora, seconded by Ms. Luong. So again, this will be for collective bargaining, units A, B, and C, principal contracts pending litigation. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummy, Mr. Froio,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. So again, everybody, we're going to leave this meeting, go into executive session, then we're going to come back to this meeting and adjourn in honor of our new student representative, Juliana Davidson. So thank you again for being here, for your willingness to participate. Mr. Weldai?
So you guys know the drill.
Ms. Davidson? Hold on one sec. Did you want to add something?
Real quick, I know this is kind of not professional, but am I supposed to go in the
I have to stay. I used to ask the exact same question, Juliana.
Mr. Weldai, so she goes from here back to studying, right?
You are good to go.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
All right.
Have a good
All
night.
right, so Adam, we're going to leave.
Yep, bottom right, leave, and then use the executive session link that was emailed to you earlier this morning.
All right, very good.
See you soon. The executives are getting so long that it almost is Hanukkah.
Adam, who are we waiting on?
John, Lenny. Oh, John's here. John beat Lenny. Lenny. I think that's it.
Okay.
I see Joe. I see Michelle. I see Jen. I see Ron.
Something happened tonight. You'll work out with Cal where you're gonna go. I'm Cal.
I've never been on my own.
No way.
Adam, are we missing? Oh, wait. One,
Oh, and the superintendent.
Yeah, it looks like just Lenny and the soup.
Okay. Looks like Kelly got it by default here.
I think we're good. So we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. McCarthy, seconded by Ms. Spadafora. And let's not forget, this is in honor of our student representative, Juliana Davidson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. School committee is hereby adjourned.
Thank you all.
Everyone.
Not everyone.
Well, later.
Good night.
Everyone.
Done.